Welcome to Business Legal Lifecycle TV, the live TV show all about the legal aspects of your business to help educate you on complex legal terms in an easy to understand manner, to help understand why you need to do certain things in your business from a legal point of view, and to help you develop a plan for the future. Our mission at Business Legal Lifecycle is to help empower all small to medium-sized businesses around the world to get access to legal advice so that they can help build their communities and make the world a better place. Did you know that any business owner is on average 7 months away from losing everything? That is the average time it takes from a successful business to fold when an aspect of their business is not set up correctly. Have you ever wanted to get legal advice but didn't understand what was going on? Do you feel like there is a divide between lawyers and their clients? Then this TV show is for you. It is all about empowering you and your business with the knowledge and tools to ensure that this doesn't happen to you. Business Legal Lifecycle TV delivers a twice-weekly show focusing on the legal aspects of your business. At lunchtime on Mondays, we present Fast Fix Monday, a quick 5 to 10 minute show that will give you some actionable steps to consider for the week for your business. And at lunchtime on Wednesdays, we present our in-depth show of between 30 minutes and an hour, where we go through complicated legal aspects of your business in a simple to understand, plain English manner. And whether that is through educational pieces or interviews with experts in their fields.
Afternoon everyone, and welcome to Business Legal Lifecycle TV. Today is Wednesday, so it's one of our longer shows, and also for today, and it's exciting, we're having one of our interview episodes with someone in the industry. As you know, if you've tuned in so far in April, we're talking about Lee Crosthwaite. He's a partner at Worrells, Solvency and Forensic Accountants. He's a registered liquidator, part of the CPA, and a professional member of the Australian Restructuring, Insolvency and Turnaround Association. Now, Worrells is a firm dedicated to solvency management, insolvency administration, and forensic investigation. Lee joined Worrells back in 2002. Recently, in 2014, he became a partner at Worrells. He's been involved in a number of high-profile type administrations that you may have heard of in Australia, including Storm Financial and We Buy Any Car. Now, Lee does a lot of work with small to medium-sized businesses, and that's the reason why we wanted to get him on the show for this month, talking about insolvency and winding up. We've known Lee for many, many years. In fact, Lee and I go back to kindergarten, and so we have done a fair bit of work with Lee over the years. So, Jeremy, do you want to talk a bit more about the interview with Lee?
Yeah, absolutely. I avoided going through the questions about your kindergarten shenanigans, Craig. But anyway, so look, this is a really interesting interview. As Craig said, you know, we've both, well, Craig's known Lee for a very long time. I've known Lee for quite some time in business. He's got a lot of good insights in relation to the insolvency space. And he's done lots of interesting things. So, I think that watching this interview, you're going to get a bit of a feel for what insolvency practitioners do and the kind of challenges that they have in the business. And also, I go through with Lee about what to do to avoid insolvency. He gets the people there at really the 11th hour and is able to, in some cases turn them around. But there's lots of stuff that people can do to avoid that happening to them. So as always, there's show notes and there's also a worksheet. We've put the link up for the worksheet below. So please enjoy my interview with Lee Crosthwaite. Welcome, Lee, to Business Legal Lifecycle TV and our podcast.
Thanks for having me, Jeremy. It's great to be here.
Excellent. Well, let's have a bit of a talk about you and your business. Craig and I had a bit of a chat beforehand. He's known you for a long time. So do you want to tell us a bit about your history and how you got into insolvency?
Right. Well, I've worked at Worrells as per the intro since 2002. Yep. I've had a good relationship with Craig, obviously, for a long time. I actually went to school, university, etc. from that with him. And then I jumped to insolvency and he went a different way. So funny about that. I did pretty much move from a graduate into the role at Worrells, a fresh face. I did work previously before that with some commercial accounts and things like that during the summer vacation periods. Yep. But during the course of study, appeal of forensic accounting grabbed me, and that came to my applying for Worrells, and then I've been here ever since. So it's been a long journey.
So it was the forensic accounting that was of an interest to you, and you've
the same sort of work. It's just those flashy lights of you know, forensics and that sort of thing. You know, there's a few flashy TV shows, CSI and that sort of thing. You know, it all combines in, so gets the appeal going.
It never works out that way, does it? Yeah, people often think.
No, very much the same. It certainly takes a lot longer than what they do on the TV.
That's right. That's right. So yeah, you mentioned you joined Worrells in 2002 and you worked up your way to partner in 2014. What kind of things did you learn on that journey that's helped you where you are today?
It's an interesting industry. There's a couple of aspects. One, obviously you're dealing with people or circumstances which can be quite confronting. So in some respect you've got to sort of work through those processes. It can't just be simply sort of, you know, making a decision or an opinion on something quite quick. You've got to sort of gather everything before you can deal with those circumstances. On the other side of things, I see many different cases. Almost every case has got its own unique factors. One day I can be working in a commercial industry, then a retail, manufacturing, etc. like that. So each case is different. And you've just got to work through those. Often you're learning on the job, even, you know, after all these years as well, you're still learning different industries or laws and regulations relating to a specific industry. Worthwhile way. So that's really what it's been about. And then I guess on the other side, the commercial front of things, just dealing with you know, assets and commercial decisions and that sort of thing, where some of them got to be made quite quickly during the processes of that. So yeah, it's handling and juggling all those balls at once is quite interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. So so that, I mean, you've obviously got a lot of experience, and that experience has kind of helped you to where you are now, and what you're doing as a partner at Worrells.
Oh, certainly, yes. I mean, as I just said before, we see a different industry almost every single day. So it's having that experience and applying basic business principles across each different industry and things like that, and the specific circumstances for those industries with that.
Yeah, and that would obviously make it interesting as well, that you see lots of different fields and different businesses and different industries would make life a lot more interesting than just doing boring old accounting, I suppose.
Yes, well, you know, people often sort of, well, we don't have repeat customers, put it that way, but each case is different, as I said, so it's quite an interesting field to be in.
Well, let's talk about insolvency, move into that as a topic, because that's what, as you know, April 2018 for us at Business Legal Lifecycle TV podcast is all about phase 13 of the Business Legal Lifecycle, which is insolvency winding up. Can you, like, on a general sense, talk us through some of the type of works that you do and the insolvency process, and we can have a bit of a chat about that as well.
Yeah, there's probably a few different stages in respect of dealing with insolvencies of businesses. I guess from a general principle, you've got individuals go bankrupt, and you've got companies that are dealt with through liquidations or voluntary administrations. But even with those, there's a range of how you would deal with each one. For example, if you've got a business, say it's a company, there's different. If a company can be facing insolvency, you know, for a period of time, depending on whether creditors are chasing them, whether they've got cash reserves and things like that, and how far that can be spread out. Dealing with a company that's sort of early facing insolvency or just become insolvent compared to a company that's heavily insolvent or has been sort of in that phase for a long period of time. You've got to deal with that in separate ways. So early on, we're looking at sort of like trying to turn around a business. That might be through restructuring of debt, etc., like that. Voluntary administration process is that usual path, or some other arrangement, scheme of arrangement through the courts and things like that. So you've got those options early on. Or the other aspect of insolvency is when we get down to sort of the death knell, I guess you'd say. A creditor may have wound up the company through the court process, or the director's thrown his hands up and appointed us to voluntarily hand it. And that's basically just dealing with the assets and the creditors in the basic sense of just recovering those assets and then paying out to the creditors, you know, monies that are there available. Sometimes there's a lot, sometimes they're little. There's also priorities that we've got to follow under the statutory regime in respect of employees getting paid first, then the balance of creditors, then shareholders if there's enough sort of to flow through. And I guess it's the same principle.
Yeah, so it's about working out what those debts are and then distributing the money around to, you know, who gets priority and who you know, who doesn't, I suppose, at the end of the day.
Yeah, sort of aim is to gather the largest pot of funds. That's from sale of assets, that's from investigations that we would undertake. We might be able to recover or claw back transactions if they've happened in certain circumstances, together to get the largest pool of funds and then distribute that, as you say, as in the priority regime.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, I think there's a lot of misnomers and misconceptions out there that insolvency is that true, or do you see it as something that people do often? Yeah, like creditors actually do get paid at the end of the day, or is it, you know, too much?
Oh, it can often. Where we come into the picture early on, which is something we sort of promote quite heavily, the earlier that we can take a position with that, the better outcome can be for creditors and also, you know, the directors and things perhaps to be continuing on. Also, there's usually more assets around. There might be more capital reserves and that sort of thing that can be distributed to the creditors. So, yeah, it's often though a case-by-case basis, sort of what type of company. Often if it's just a service company, you won't have any assets. Yep. Whereas if you're in sort of a manufacturing or some other business, you'll have quite a
as we've talked about, we're all about giving some practical information to people here at Business Legal Lifecycle. So what are some of the key mistakes that you see business owners make in their business that forces them into insolvency?
Yeah, well, this is from a small to medium business sort of focus, I guess,
Yes.
where you can control a lot of those sort of things. So, just general management, financial management is often sort of, there's not strong business principles and that sort of thing behind businesses, and that really costs people. Not having proper budgets or financial information or up-to-date financial information really, it makes it hard for someone to be able to identify and then address issues within their business if they don't have, up-to-date financial information.
Yep.
And in terms of also budgeting as well, the costs or the cash flow that's going to happen over the 12 months or so, sales and revenues and that sort of thing. Once certain projects might run out, sort of where's the next income coming? So you've got to identify, okay, well, when revenues and things are going to drop, what do you do about those sorts? So yeah, having a good business plan and having good business management and having those financial and up-to-date financial key factors really that underpin a lot of it, and probably enough capital into the businesses. And from the start, early on, often people start a business and they just don't have the capital to get chasing the game.
Yeah, I think that's fair, and it's something I've noticed a lot in my business. As a law firm, we often see that people just don't have that right education on how to run a business. They might be great technicians, they might be great at doing their job, but does it, because at the end of the day, there's a lot more that you need to learn in running the business rather than just doing the work and sending out invoices and
the old adage of plenty of very good builders, they just don't have those business skills to run quite large businesses and things like that. If they're employing 10, 20 staff and multi-million dollar turnovers, just being the ability to do all sort of education and management skills is really costly in some circumstances.
Yeah, it's all well and good when everything's going well, and then it's turned bad, everyone else is to blame, and they don't know how to deal with it. So I think that's we've talked on this show, Craig and I, many times about why you need a business coach. You need someone to educate you on what you need to do for running your business, because it's just something people just don't know about. And so I think
100%. And certainly there's lots of different aspects that people don't appreciate. There's also managing all the business you should be doing, and which work you should be getting advice from lawyers, accountants, other people like that. We've got quite a lot of regulation and red tape, taxes, tax regimes and all that's so difficult for a small business owner, for example, who's just trying to run a you know, a small shop or that small construction business or something like that.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So, yeah, that's some of the key mistakes they make. What are some of the practical steps that people can take to avoid insolvency happening to them and their business? What have you?
Yeah,
and here, sorry, Lee, just here, you know, even some examples if you've got any on that as well.
Yeah, well, I guess some of those ones we've already discussed, and we can expand on those. You know, you've got to have a good business plan, and you know, the management. You know, you've got to make sure that you know where you're heading, where your sort of target market is. If you're in sort of retail or something of that effect, you've got to make sure you know where you're heading and where you want your business to head. So I think just having that sound base is one first step.
Yep.
I can't stress probably enough that having up-to-date financial information and accurate financial information. So, you know, keeping the basic bookkeeping and all that sort of thing up to date, so you can literally, now there's good accounting programs and things like that you can have up-to-date live information, that not just for yourself but your other advisors, you know, accountants, probably not lawyers, Jeremy, but you know, other financial advisors that can be looking at those numbers and seeing, you know, there's other good products out there that, you know, have alerts and things if, you know, you trade down creditors and things like that. So having that up-to-date information, you can actually be looking at it, know where your business is, and then take the steps you need to.
Yeah, I think it's good advice not to ask lawyers for financial advice.
Yeah.
We're lawyers for a reason. I often say I'm a lawyer because I was no good at maths. Yes. Yeah. Don't come to lawyers for financial advice.
Yeah, but you've got your own business, Jeremy. Your name's on the door. So
that's right. I mean, I know of my own business, but yeah, it's not my skill set to advise other people on it.
Yeah. Yes, of course. But just having that there and knowing, like, and even being able to identify, okay, well, the revenues are going to start to drop because this was a one-off project. Okay, we've now got to look at our expenses line and deal with those, and creditors and cash flow and all that sort of, you know, buffers for profit. Yep. You know, often we'll see, and we'll be sitting down talking to directors, for example, and they'll have their sales team off, you know, signing up all these new work or whatever like that, but there's no correlation between that and the actual sort of analysis of profit margins, or even if it's worthwhile or feasible for that work to be done, or the discounts that they're getting just to sign up, you know, sales, where the back end doesn't sort of fit without the tail doesn't wag, so to speak. So, you know, you just got to make sure that you're across those and looking. So it's having up-to-date information and then looking at it. So that's a really key point of view. And as I said, then also, you know, working with, you know, if you do start to struggle into financial positions, working with the people that are involved, working with the banks early, working with, you know, your staff as well, working with creditors, that sort of thing, to see where you can go with that. Yep. And again, also talking to your advisors, accountants, lawyers, and even if need be, insolvency practitioners like myself. But the earlier that we can get in there, there's more options to deal with it. Things a lot better than sort of leaving it to the last minute, which unfortunately is a bit of human nature at times.
Yeah, so what I'm hearing is there's lots of little things to think about. It's all about running the business, but don't leave it to the last minute, which is, you would.
That's correct, yeah. Unfortunately it is often, and it's a frustration of mine all the time, is that we just get called in far too late, and sort of if it had been a few months earlier, then, you know, we could have had some more options, or people might even come and see me and then sort of you know, things drag on. You know, again, we talk about human nature, but that's part of business, isn't it? And sort of we'll get many sort of leading up to Christmas thinking, oh, say it's in a manufacturing or some other industry like that. Oh, if I can just get through to Christmas, you know, I'll be able to have a refresher over Christmas break. January will kick on, you know, as normal. Or if it's in retail, it's often the reverse. Sort of, you know, they'll be doing the same, and then it gets to January, and sort of they start to look at everything. So it's just timing of all of that can often be a key player.
Yeah. So obviously we're not going to use any names, but have you got any examples of obviously don't use any names, but
Yeah. Oh, look, often we give advice, and where we are sort of engaged fairly early on, to go through and, you know, just doing that planning, making sure that there's, you know, new systems put into place, reporting systems, that sort of thing. Often when we go through the voluntary administration process, and we've done a couple of community clubs recently, it's going in and getting processes put into place. You know, inherently those sort of that club industry is often on a volunteer type sort of basis, but they're operating multi-million-dollar businesses in terms of turnover. So the people involved in the committees who have the ultimate sort of say in everything, got to have proper processes in that. And a number that we've been dealing with recently that we have been able to turn around, it's been getting reporting structures and that sort of thing in place to allow that, and effectively in some ways give more education and empower the committee to make more informed decisions rather than just being fed whatever the general manager might be giving them, or vice versa. Sometimes it's important to have structures the other way, where the committees might want something done, but they need to do it through a proper channel down to the general manager to make sure that the general manager is sort of aware sort of what's involved, and he's got a process of reporting so that, you know, proper decisions can be made. It's just not sort of on the fly type sort of things.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So I mean that's good, because it's that applies not just in those kind of businesses, but in all businesses, doesn't it? If you don't follow the numbers and follow the scoreboard, how are you going to know what the score is? So.
If you don't know what your base is or your ability with your current base is. And that's a little bit circular to what we've discussed today in terms of having proper reporting, having proper capital base and that sort of thing. And if some of those cogs aren't working properly, then, you know, it's hard to difficult to wind up the machine and get it going.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. All right. So that's the insolvency process. It's an interesting game. I've always enjoyed it. Let's talk a bit about the future. So, in every industry, there's a lot of disruption going on. It's a buzzword that's around at the moment. What do you
Yes.
what do you see as the biggest challenge in the in your industry? In this insolvency industry, say in the next 5 years, or it could be a shorter time frame if you think it's going to disrupt more quickly than that.
This time last year and in September, in terms of both how those two bits of legislation function and also the regulatory side of things as well.
Yep.
So we've gone through a lot of change in that respect. As a result of that, there's been a few insolvency practitioners that have dropped out. There's a few other areas sort of opened up, turnaround and safe harbour, which is sort of pre-insolvency work. So that we've been through a lot of change with that. I think as a result of that going forward, for the next couple of years, there's a lot more sort of regulation and tightening of regulations. So I think that's still sort of to be massaged out amongst our industry. And I think that expands further out as well. There's been other sort of peripheral changes, in the financial planning area and auditing and other places like that, which sort of, I think there's a lot of regulatory on things still to play out coming forward. So it is going to be interesting in that respect. As I said, I just briefly mentioned the safe harbour. You know, that's going to be an interesting sort of, I think for a lot of larger companies perhaps. So the safe harbour, for your listeners, is essentially, it gives an opportunity for directors to take some actions to restructure or turn around the company without having the fear of being insolvent trading and sort of those type of breaches of duties down the track if it doesn't work out. So they've got a period of time, and they can take specialist advice, and that'll give them certain ability to take certain action without that fear. So that's an area that's sort of expanding in the insolvency space, and sort of whilst it wasn't in play for a couple of examples, but the likes of Channel 10 and a few, perhaps Dick Smith, or those types of big name ones we've seen recently, they may have been able to utilise that, and that's really what I think it's designed for. There will be some smaller application to smaller size companies as well, which will probably fit within the sphere I mostly operate. So that'll be an interesting area going forward as well. And I think the other big one, which is principally an insolvency issue, but I think it's going to affect the broader business world, changes coming through, which again, and for your listeners, is essentially where it's written in contracts saying that if there's an insolvency event, that's now going to be, in an insolvency sense anyway, that can be struck out. So there's going to be some interesting ways as to how that deals with, in terms of there's going to be landlords, there's going to be suppliers, there's going to be other parties to the insolvent entity that are going to have basically a limitation on what they can do in respect of stopping or terminating a contract. So that's going to have a quite broad application, I think, and Jeremy, probably over to you as to how that'll play out.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. The safe harbour ones, as you know, I've been in March. I did a seminar series with another firm on that, and it's very interesting, the safe harbour stuff. It's going to be really interesting to see where that plays out, as well as the ipso facto stuff. Yeah, there's obviously no cases on any of this stuff. The ipso facto comes in, I think it's the 1st of July 2018 from memory. And the safe harbour's already in. Have you had any particular cases where you've been able to use safe harbour? Or to put together a plan to safe harbour for any clients in the pre-insolvency space, or is that something that you're still working on at the moment?
Yeah, we've had a couple of sort of preliminary inquiries and that sort of thing as to how we might and what we might be able to apply it to. There are a few steps, as I said, you've got to go through in relation to it. So sometimes whilst it might look applicable from the outset, you actually can't engage with it. So, and there's some costs involved as well. So we haven't actually had too many where we've been able to kick that off. And then also, just because of the period of time it's been involved, really see the path that's taken down the track. So, and I also think probably I'll see more so on the other side where directors have engaged, sort of undertaken that course, and if it hasn't quite worked out, then sort of, you know, recourse there may be in respect if we're, say, appointed a liquidator or something like that.
Yeah, I think it's going to be interesting to see what plans are put in place, because there's no, for people who know what safe harbour actually looks like and what plan you've got to put in place, it's just what's reasonable in the circumstances. And so that's going to be a really interesting argument down the track, because there's going to be some people who think that they've done all the right steps, and liquidators who disagree with them and say that the safe harbour shouldn't apply.
one side or the other as to what's actually reasonable in the circumstances. But it's not exactly what that means, and leaves it up to the court to decide later on, which is also often in the insolvency space, isn't it?
That's exactly right. Look, I think there's going to be the liquidator says, and then probably the court. So there's quite a number of competing parties that are sort of going to have different views.
Sure. No doubt we'll probably have a whole other topic to talk about that in a couple of years' time once there's been some cases and we've seen how it actually plays out in practice.
Yeah, sure will. We sure will. Yep.
Excellent. So, and the ipso facto stuff, that's interesting as well in the sense of that essentially that means that a client, as you know, a client can't, or the other side of a contract can't just terminate a contract if administrators have wanted, in essence. And so that's to allow companies to continue trading. And it's going to be very interesting because there's a lot of contracts that are in place now that have a clause that says that, say, a landlord can terminate if a tenant goes into administration, but but until a new contract's entered into after the 1st of July 2018, the old contract will apply. So I think that's an area where we're not going to see a lot of change for a while. It's going to take a while to actually get some guidance as to what it all means, because it changes will take a while to filter through, because you can is changing in that regard, and they need to know that it is, and what that actually means for them, because it won't be a problem when everything's going well, but it'll become a problem later when they're trying to exercise a right and they can't do it.
Sure will. And once again, there'll be that tension again between sort of what the company and the liquidator or administrators want to do and what the supplier and the creditors, happy to do. So, yeah, I suspect trips up to the court with that one as well.
At least in the early
stages.
Things
play out.
Yeah,
that's right.
At least in the early stages to work out what the court's interpretation of that's going to be. So that'll be interesting. So, look, last question on the future. What's next on the horizon for you personally?
Look, I'm essentially just out and to help people educate, our referrers, accountants, solicitors, and also directors, and that sort of thing on just some of the principles where business management has.
Everyone's got a lot of great value out of that, so that's been really good. Is it all right if we move into some quick fire questions?
Righto, fire away. Let's go.
All right. So, what's the book that you're currently reading? It doesn't have to be a business book. Could be a fiction if you like. Or non-fiction, either one.
Yeah, look, as you know, I'm quite a sports fan. I'm actually just reading Tim Cahill's autobiography that my kids bought me from. I'll be doing that. Hope probably finish that off over Easter.
Excellent. Yeah. So, what book what book do you think that every business owner should read?
This is slightly on a All Blacks. So, you know, Richie McCaw sort of set the standard, and they sweep up and clean every single change room they have after each game and that sort of thing, because nobody looks after the All Blacks.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of those sort of principles in there that can be translated across in respect of helping, you know, business leadership and sort of being proactive with things.
Yeah, I haven't read that book, but I've heard a lot of people rave about it. And it's interesting. We did an interview with Kevin Hockey a few weeks ago. He's a real estate agency sales. He runs that business, and he was, one of the questions I asked him was about what he's learned from sport that he's brought into the business field. And it's a lot of that, and there's a lot of good lessons that people learn from those things. So I think that's a great book. I think I'm going to have to pick it up because I haven't read it yet, and everyone's telling me to read it. So
you should, Jeremy. Look, it's only a short book. It's an easy read, but it's got some really good points in it.
Excellent. So number three, number three, if you wanted to give advice to your younger self, what would that advice be?
Oh, this is always a tough one, isn't it? You know, you'd like that. I mean, I guess it's still just ensuring that as the path you go along, you put in the hard yards, and you'll know still that you know, you get some good outcomes at the end.
Excellent. Well, thank you for that. That's that, and I'll just conclude with viewers and listeners today.
I think it's just identifying if you do get to the point in the business cycle where you are having trouble and that sort of thing. It's to make we'll seek advice early. You know, if you need to speak to someone, whether it's a solicitor, accountant, some other financial person, you know, you've got that ability, and if you can do it early, then you've got more option.
Yeah.
To
It's something that I agree with you 100%. People need to get advice early. Don't put your head in the sand. The ostrich approach doesn't work. That just
yeah, that's right. I guess when you're going in, having sort of an exit strategy, which I know you talk about at length, Jeremy, in your books and talks, but you know, it's having that exit strategy and where that is another key focus as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, as I said earlier, if you don't know where you're going, how are you ever going to get there? So
That's exactly right.
email address or website?
Yep, I'm based primarily in the Worrells Brisbane CBD office. You can contact my email address, lee.crosthwaite@worrells.net.au, or you can call me direct on 073-225-4381.
Excellent. Well, we'll put those in the show notes. So if they want to know more about Worrells, they can check that out.
Yep, that's our website. There's lots of information there. Yeah, so have a look, and you'll be able to go from there.
Excellent. Well, once again, thank you very much for your time today.
Jeremy, great to talk to you.
Well, I hope you enjoyed that far-ranging interview that I did with Lee. Lee, as I said in the intro, is a really interesting guy, someone Craig's known about since kindergarten, and he's got lots of great insights into the insolvency. I'd encourage you to take away what we talked about what to do to avoid insolvency, because by the time you get to someone like Lee, often it can be too late. So look, I really enjoyed that interview with Lee. Craig, did you want to finish up?
Absolutely. We obviously thank Lee for giving up his time and coming on the show. As Jeremy said, a lot of valuable information there from someone that's been practicing in this area for some time. So yeah, we encourage everyone to get a lot out of it, and obviously listen to the things that he said in the interview and follow those if they're relevant to you. As always, if you've got any questions, please let us know. There will be the show notes on the website as well, so you can download those. But please get in touch with us. For any questions, we're always here and happy to help. And Lee might be able to answer some questions too, depending on what they are. So excellent. Thank you for joining us. We'll be back on Monday for Fast Fix Monday, where we'll be touching a bit more on bankruptcy, so the individual bankruptcy, and some reasons why you should avoid bankruptcy. So join us then. But at this stage, we'll be off, and we'll see you Monday. Thank you everyone for joining us. See you later.
Thanks, everyone.